everybody.
Hello.
Have a good to see you, ladies and gentlemen, in the room, and also to those who are watching us in the live stream. Have a good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear change makers, where are you? Hello, everybody. Come inside. I still see you. We do have some seats left. Come inside. A warm welcome to all of you to this very special gathering, to the Responsible Leaders Innovation Forum. It's great to see you.
Fantastic to see you. Great having you all here. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce you to my dear colleague, Katie Gallas. Maybe a little applause for Katie. In the run-up, thank you very much. In the run-up to this event, I was asking Katie where she's actually based. And I asked her that because in our preparation Teams call, she was either on her way to Australia, or she came back from Tanzania, or was off to Warsaw. And she said to me, actually she returned a question, and she said, "Where do you think my washing machine is?" And this anecdote, or this question, tells a lot about the status quo of Katie Gallas. She is, as an international journalist and as a presenter, she is almost always on the road, be it in crisis regions around the world, or be it in the center of power. This is the first time, actually, we are moderating together, and now you understand why I'm looking forward to that so much, and you will also understand, by the way, her washing machine is in Berlin, you will also understand why I'll ask you again for a very big round of applause for Katie Gallas.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure. That's very kind, Dominic. And it's truly a blessing for me, as this theme of our gathering today is collaboration, co-creation and cooperation, to work with you and to be with you together here on stage, but also with a lot of experts. You are a master of communication. You are a New York Times best-selling author. And when I was looking through your CV, I thought, oh my God, how many lives did you live? Because you were also a former editor-in-chief of both SZ magazine and Stern, and you're the founder of Looping Group. So change and transition, being bold, courageous for change, it really runs through your veins, and I can't wait to learn more from you. Dominic Wichmann, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Katie. And before I'll ask you a question, I'll ask you, there are still some seats here in the first row, so if you want to have the opportunity of sitting in the first row, just do it. Come and have a seat here. Katie, if I were sitting in the audience, what do I actually need in order to get the best experience out of this evening and out of tomorrow, Friday? What do I need?
As always, an open heart.
And mind.
An open mind, as always, right? Where's your phone?
It's actually not here because I was afraid that it's ringing. It's over there. But you have your phone.
I would answer your phone
right?
calls. No. You need your phone because, of course, you need the app. The app is really where the magic also happens, not just here in the room, but also online, of course. Download it through the QR code on the backside of your badge, because you will find all the information there. So the app on the phone, that is something that you need to have the best experience.
Why is that so important?
Well, as always in life, Dominic, you need to know where you get your information from, right? And you will find all the information about the event, about the panels, about the speakers, about the workshops that you signed up for, about this beautiful venue. Have a look, because really the space where we're in really shapes our conversations, our thinking, our thoughts. You will find all the information on the app, but also about, when it comes to sustainability, what makes this venue so sustainable? Sustainability measurements, everything is to be found in the app.
You also, by the way, can use the app for making appointments with people you would love to have an appointment with, interact with each other. And we're going to introduce a tool, it's called Slido, where we ask you to participate in questions. And in order to do that, you need this special app. So we're doing some advertising here. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the great pleasure and the great honor of inviting the two members of the Foundation Sport to the stage. May I ask you for a very big round of applause for Heba Agib and Heike Schneeweiß.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Heba Agib, And I am Heike Schneeweiß. A very warm welcome also from my side to our Responsible Leaders Innovation Forum here in Berlin and on the live stream.
We have big plans for the coming 2 days, and we are so excited to see so many friends, responsible leaders, and partners of the BMW Foundation Herbert Quandt here at Westhafen.
The most exciting thing is that we are united here to foster collaboration on the most pressing issues of our time.
Leaders in this room are leading across disciplines, across different generations, and from different parts of the world. I see Anne Mettler, sorry for doing that, a great voice and energy for change in Europe. Amani Abu Zaid, a great voice for the African economy and the opportunities. And Daisy Lab entrepreneurs coming all the way from New Zealand. Raise your hands. Woo! Thank you for being with us.
And here at the front, I welcome our dear members of our Board of Trustees. Great to have you all here.
Thank you.
We are all about people, individuals building relationships, creating different and new networks, establishing ecosystems, and always being part of something bigger. Society.
Now we see the urgent need of all sectors of society, policy, business, science, and civil society to all come together at one table in order to be able to solve together, to move forward, and to secure impact.
We all know how difficult it can be to work and think together. Different personalities, different backgrounds, skills, and expertise. It can be a challenge, but at the same time, it can be a big asset. You can achieve bigger things whilst you are thinking out of the box. If I come to my corporate experience, we have, for sure, high-performing teams, and I can say they boost the performance in combining a common goal with motivation, an expertise with ambition. But the key to make the real difference is self-reflection and a positive attitude.
And we need exactly what Heike is saying. And sadly, there are just a few examples of successful international collaborations for global issues. A great example is the fight against the ozone hole. Business, science, and policymakers came together and made quick decisions and executed. Now, we all know that business is the fastest at implementing and driving solutions and massive transformations. We see Airbnb, Amazon, the GAFAMs, BioNTech, they disrupted entire industries and triggered global change.
We need exactly the same level of speed, innovation, and accountability to tackle the today's and tomorrow's challenges for society. We both are committed to working together. Let's identify those innovative pathways.
Let's talk about working together and the power of collaboration. The BMW Foundation's team initiated the so-called Start to Impact process, a collaborative process from the identification of challenges all the way through until implementation. This year, we had with partners and leaders policy and industry roundtables at the Munich Security Conference and at the New York Climate Week. We had a foundation roundtable, and one is tomorrow. We had an energy transition global expert council and great Respond entrepreneurs which joined us over the whole year. And why are we doing this? Because we want to identify and boost solutions that do exist. We want to lead and connect initiatives that matter, and we want to build private-public philanthropic partnerships.
Tomorrow, you will see our very first challenge: international collaboration to develop energy transition and infrastructure solutions. We are convinced that we can drive forward decarbonization of industry without compromising competitiveness of economy. We have so much more now to share with you, but come with us, our new vision and mission.
Let's watch the video.
We invite you.
We believe in the power of collaboration. As a global network foundation, our ambition is to pave innovative pathways and make a tangible contribution to promoting responsible action. It's the only way we can tackle the challenges of our time together. That's why we unite the brightest minds from business, policy, science, and civil society to jointly develop forward-looking approaches and solutions. This creates a positive dynamic that strengthens an innovative and responsible economy, while also promoting an open-minded and future-proof society. BMW Foundation Herbert Quandt. The power of collaboration.
Thank you. It needs to be our responsibility to drive forward solutions that have a measurable impact. It is our role to build a society that is future-proof, where impact reaches as many people as possible, and where the impact is being delivered on time. We need to do this together. We can do this together.
Absolutely right, Heba. We want to achieve the next level. And I ask you, how can you contribute? Approach the forum with an open mind. Share your thoughts and ideas and make new connections. Then we are convinced that we can achieve together with you great things and make a difference for the society.
Yes, we believe in the power of human capacity for change and innovation. So let's create the future together.
Thank you for being here with us. Enjoy the forum. Have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. Have a hike. A big round of applause for this visionary statement here. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. And you really bring us into the journey of the forum. So we've heard already a lot of important words, a lot of important thoughts, and we, of course, will think of that during and on that journey towards the whole forum. So when it comes to the major challenges, ladies and gentlemen, of course, the challenges are very differently in the colors and the perspectives, but when it comes to democracy, when it comes to this buzzword resilience, how do we strengthen that muscle of resilience, right? And how do we work together when it comes to collective action? That is really important when it comes to the debate on change, on transformation. Because what is the fuel of change and transformation? And I'd like to share with you a rather honest perspective from my side. I moderate a lot of events, and it always comes to the buzzwords, let's walk the talk. Let's break out the silos. And I was like, yes, heard that before, heard that before, heard that before. And I always wonder, who is on stage, right? Most of the times, there is a gathering on stage with people from a similar-ish age group. I see you nodding. From similar-ish industries, geographies, perspectives. And we said, no, we're going to change that. We want to invite different voices, different perspectives, but also different age groups, different generations. Because the perspectives and the challenges, we need to find multi-generational, multi-perspective solutions on these challenges with experiences from the past, but not to forget, when we talk about the future, we shouldn't talk about the future without the future, right? So we need this hopeful drive for the future. So in fact we do, and another buzzword, the can-do mentality. We need the togetherness, And then I'd like to invite you to use the word that a lot of scientists are using, social cohesion. Another buzzword. What is social cohesion? Of course, the studies and the science know what that is. I would say it's the glue, the connection, the connectivity, not just in the internet, but between us in our inner net, the personal net, to find solutions together. And it's a space where we debate. And for that, I invite now the panelists for our, I love it, intergenerational conversation, because we invite different generations here on stage. So please join me, Jules and Zoe, Paula Schmidt and Selma Cafferty. Where are you? Join me. We can still do that. Yes. Feel free to sit. Here we go. Here we go. I think we have enough microphones. Yes. So lovely to have you. Just as a little, reminder, as COVID is still around, maybe you're missing one age generation here, as COVID is still around us, right? We had a last-minute cancellation literally just a couple of hours ago, unfortunately. So with us would have been Jutta as well from Oma gegen Rechts, but she needed to cancel, obviously, because COVID is still no fun around. Nevertheless, please welcome Jules and Zoe. Yes. You excited? Seid ihr aufgeregt? A little bit, right? Jules and Zoe, I quickly give you an introduction. Ich würde euch kurz vorstellen, and we do this in English and German. Wir machen das auf Englisch und auf Deutsch, damit ihr euch auch wohlfühlt, weil es ist natürlich total aufregend. It's very exciting to be here. Nevertheless, Jules and Zoe, it's wonderful to have you. You are growing up in the German capital Berlin, a very cosmopolitan, a very urban environment, as ihr kommt aus Berlin. You attend a Montessori concept school in Berlin-Kreuzberg. And as I said, we're just gonna quickly translate back and forth. Also, ich habe euch kurz vorgestellt, dass ihr aus Kreuzberg kommt, aber von der Montessori-Schule, und dass wir uns total freuen, dass ihr natürlich da seid. Toll. Neben euch, next to you, is Paula Schmidt on the left-hand side. You just came, Thank you. Paula, you just came back from New York City. Of course, with the UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly was going on, but we also attended the UN Summit of the Future, and we want to hear all about it. But to you, and you know, we talk in several conversations on stage, but always it's important for you to underline that global solutions to the challenges of our time can only be found in working together, and of course, by strong international organizations. And that's where your passion for the United Nations really developed. You're working for the German UN Association, you organize workshops, you participate in UN youth conferences around the world, and you're still studying political science. I don't know how you do it, all that, but great to have you. Paula! Great. And with us, ladies and gentlemen, is also Selma Cafferty. You are studying international relations in Dresden and in Tokyo, so you really bring different perspectives into your curriculum. You also have a big heart for the United Nations, if I may say so, and you believe that most problems in the age of the poly-crisis that we are living in can be better solved with than without the United Nations. Nevertheless, the United Nations must be reformed to really leverage its potential. That's what I found out when we had a debate, and of course your thematic focus is on that topic, how to reform also political processes. I think we all need to learn on that, on different political stages, but you really drive forward your motivation for opportunities to underrepresented groups, not just women, but also especially young people. Selma, it's great to have you. Great. Thank you. How is it on stage? Wie fühlt ihr euch? Gut? Ja? Schon immer so ein Publikum in der Klasse gehabt? Nee, ne? Aber fühlt sich gut an. Ich freue mich, dass ihr da seid, weil ich das vorhin schon gesagt habe. So oft spricht man auf Bühnen über die Zukunft, ohne mit der Zukunft. As I just mentioned, you so often talk about the future, right? Without the future generation. And therefore, I'd like to start with you, Jules and Zoe. Es ist ja bald Weihnachten. Und ich habe jetzt hier kein Weihnachtsgeschenk, weil so schnell geht es natürlich nicht. Aber ihr seid hier eingeladen worden. Wir reden über Wandel, über Transformation, über die Zukunft. Was wäre denn ein Wunsch von eurer Seite aus, den ihr gerne hier auch diesem Publikum, a lot of people in power, gerne mitgeben wollt? What would be a wish that you have to these people? Also ein Wunsch von euch, den ihr gerne mit uns teilt. Zoe, würdest du anfangen? Ja? Mikrofon schön da ran und wir hören alle zu und sind gewillt, das auch umzusetzen. Zoe, die Bühne gehört dir.
Also ich wünsche mir mehr Gerechtigkeit auf der Welt. Also ich finde, jeder Mensch sollte gleich behandelt werden, egal welche Hautfarbe und Herkunft er hat. Ich finde Kinderrechte sehr wichtig, weil jedes Kind das Recht haben sollte auf eine Bildung, Spiel und Freizeit und natürlich am wichtigsten eine gute Zukunft. Und es ist halt unsere Zukunft und unsere Zukunft ist uns halt wichtig und ja, deshalb sollten wir unsere Erde besser behandeln, achtsamer und sauberer mit ihnen umgehen.
Behandeln? Ja! Redest du da auch viel mit deinen Freunden drüber, über die Themen?
Also manchmal manchmal, aber auch mit meinen Eltern darüber und so.
Ehrlich, ist das so am Abendessen dann Thema? Mama,
Nein.
Papa, was macht ihr?
Also nicht so mega oft, also ja, manchmal halt.
Manchmal, aber besser als gar nicht. Deswegen toll, Zoe. Danke für deinen Wunsch. Schreiben wir auf und merken uns. Jules, was wäre denn so ein Wunsch, wo du sagen würdest, Mensch, also da müssten wir jetzt mal ran. Das wäre so was dir einfach auf der Seele und auch im Herzen brennt.
Also mein Wunsch wäre, dass wir den Klimawandel halt zurücksetzen sozusagen und dass es weniger Müllberge gibt, keine Luftverschmutzung mehr und dafür mehr Grünflächen.
Mhm. Machst du das auch in deinem Alltag, dass du zum Beispiel Müll trennst? Also sorgst du auch so in deinem eigenen Alltag dafür, dass es der Umwelt besser geht?
Also mit Müll nicht so, aber im Hof.
Ja. Oh, schön. Okay. Ich muss jetzt mal ganz kurz auf Englisch nochmal übersetzen. Ist das okay für euch? Also entschuldigt mich kurz. So I just gonna translate the answers. Zoe was mentioning, because I asked them both, what would be a wish that you'd like to pass on to the audience here. So Zoe was mentioning, okay, I'd like to have justice in the world. I'd like to have children's rights moving forward. I'd like to have more justice in the world. And Jules was mentioning, of course, we have to fight climate change, and we need to tackle the destruction that goes on towards our planetary boundaries, towards the planet, towards the planet's health. And then I was actually asking both, how are you actively engaged in your everyday life, either in talking or in doing? And both said, yeah, we talk with our parents. That was the thing that Zoe mentioned. And also Jules encountered and underlined that, of course, he's also very actively engaged, not just in recycling, but in a lot of other things as well. Jules, Zoe, vielen Dank an euch beide, wir merken uns das. Coming now back, switching. High five. No, stay. No, I have so many more questions, but I'd like to have Paula and Selma also in conversation. No, it's great. Thank you for being here. Now you can relax. Yeah? It's done. Take your water if you want to drink something. Feel relaxed, feel at home. Paula and Selma, isn't it amazing to hear the young voices and then you are not anymore the youngest voices here on the couch, what you normally are when we're inviting the youth. So tell us a little bit about your journey to the UN Summit of the Future. What did you encounter? Paula, you've been to New York, was it beneficial? Did it also motivate you now to do even more? Or are there also challenges in the work of being a youth ambassador when it comes to all these huge gatherings in New York?
Well, most of all, it was a very fascinating and empowering experience to be at the place where the magic happens, the United Nations, where world leaders come together to really discuss the most pressing issues of our time. And we as young people were really part of that conversation, yeah? We sat in the General Assembly, we listened to Antonio Guterres' speech on the power of future generations, and of course for us that was an extraordinary opportunity to advocate for the interests of younger generations. And as we can see here, they're already so young people, and they're thinking about issues like climate change, equality. It's really in our system right now, yeah, that young people are actively questioning the decisions of decision makers of our time, and we try to do that in a more institutionalized way. We wanted to get access to the negotiations for the Pact of the Future. The Pact of the Future was mainly the pact which should be adopted during the Summit of the Future. And as youth observers to the Summit of the Future, we really wanted to bring our perspectives into it. And of course, we tried our best, but you already asked, were there some problems? Yes, because unfortunately, we were not really part of the action negotiations. And yeah, that was for us the more difficult part about it.
Yeah, if I can jump right into it here, I would like to place emphasis on the fact that this summit is so much more than just the language that ended up in the pact. There were so many roundtables, so many discussions, and sometimes the magic doesn't happen on stage, but the most meaningful conversations to me often happen off stage, sometimes over coffee, over pizza, or just when walking from one venue to another. But what I really admired was that policymakers actively consulted us. We've talked to members of the German parliament and to the European Parliament as well, and sometimes they presented us issues they were working on and really asked us, what do you think about this? How can we add a younger youth perspective to this? And that's something that we need more. We want to get engaged and we want to consult actively, because the new motto here is nothing about us without us. And it really is our future, it's your future, and it's everyone's future. So everyone should have a seat at the table and a right to be active in those discussions.
Absolutely. To zoom in a little bit, do you have the feeling that your voices are heard of and do matter? Because one thing is to get invited to events, roundtables, stages, podiums. The other thing is what is actually ending up in the report and in the pack. So how do you observe that? Is there a development that that it's really dribbling into the paperwork as well? What are you wishing for?
Yeah, I just start with a bit of an anecdote from the Youth Action Days that took part the 2 days before the summit, leading up to it. And right in the beginning, they started this Mentimeter thing. You might be familiar with it, and asked the audience, what do you think is the current stage of youth participation? And I think there were 5 or 6 levels. And approximately a third of the audience said, we're still on level 1, tokenization. We're there, we take photos, we smile, and we might say something, but what we say doesn't really end up in the reports. And I think there is some progress, and for instance, in the Pact for the Future, there's a whole chapter on youth, there's a whole annex on the declaration of future generations, and this term, future generations that are not born yet, has been established by this pact. That is some great achievement. So I think we are moving forward, but there's not happening enough and not fast enough yet. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, we can really observe that there's a paradigm shift at the United Nations, and they are actively trying to include young people systematically. But still, we have to change our language when we talk about youth participation, yeah? Solemnly having a chapter in the Pact for the Future is not enough. We really have to talk about co-creation, equal power at the table. There is no use for us if we're just having a seat, but there is no equal power distribution, yeah? So there is a deeper conversation behind it, and we really want to be consulted. That does not only apply to a political context, not only to the United Nations. We have many distinguished business leaders here today, and as youth observers, we can only say, please include young voices too in your enterprises. When you're developing new products, the product will be better when young people are involved, because they bring innovation thinking, they bring long-term vision into the discussion, and that's what we noticed during our many intense debates with youth delegates from around the globe, with diplomats, but now it has to be implemented.
I do hear leaders of the future here. Lovely. Thank you, Paula and Selma, but also to Jules and Zoe. We're going to see each other again on stage tomorrow for the workshop with you from tomorrow 4 to 5 p.m. with the topic Zukunft gemeinsam gestalten, ein generationenübergreifender Austausch über die Stadt von morgen, about the citizen and the cities of tomorrow. So to you who wants to sign up, limited spots of 10 people. Please register as quickly as possible. First come, first serve. Lovely. I could go on for another 2 hours, but the time's running out, unfortunately. So this is your round of applause. Thank you so much to Zoe, Jules, Paula, and Selma. Thank you. I'll see you. Thank you so much. And Dominic, I would say I hand over back to you, Dominic.
Thank you very much for this refreshing panel. It was gorgeous. Don't you think so? Please give them an applause. Thank you very much, as I said, for this refreshing panel. Yanis, the stakes are high for your keynote. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled. Sorry, I have to get rid of my glasses here. Anyway, I'm thrilled to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker for this evening. As you all know, Yanis Varoufakis is a rather remarkable figure who has made significant contributions both in academia and in politics, which is a rare thing. It doesn't happen too often, as we all know. As the former Greek Minister of Finance and member of the Greek Parliament, he possesses unique insights into the mechanisms of European politics as well as economics, especially, I guess, in times of crises. His academic journey has taken him to prestigious institutions such as the University of Essex, Cambridge, and the University of Texas. And next to being a famous economist, Mr. Varoufakis is also a sought-after author. His latest work, called Techno-Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism, ? Is, as far as I know, and I'm an outsider in that field, it's sparkling lively discussions, to put it mildly, within academia and beyond. In his keynote address, titled The Power of Collaboration, Yanis Varoufakis will undoubtedly draw on his extensive expertise in economics, in politics, and in international relations. As a keen analyst of the evolving political landscape and the development of economics, his talk promises to provide very insightful perspectives on the strength of collaboration and the necessity of collaboration in our globalized world. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcome Yanis Varoufakis.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate in. I realized coming in here that this is more of a celebration of collaboration rather than a kind of academic-y, boring, university-like seminar. So I'm very glad to be part of this celebration of collaboration, because collaboration is the crucial link, bridge between common interest and achieving, through collective action, the implementation of what needs to be implemented in order to bring about the common interest, to facilitate it. The success of a society depends on building this bridge, because simply having a common interest does not necessarily mean that we will manage to collaborate, cooperate, and bring about the fulfillment of that which serves our common interest. Now, allow me, at the risk of sullying the spirit of celebration, because I suppose this is why I have been invited, to make the point that here in Europe, over the last 20 years at least, we have not been very good at serving our collective European interest. Now, we talk a very good game: cohesion, integration, competitiveness, the importance of the green transition, huge announcements with very large figures. Remember the Lisbon Agenda? According to the Lisbon Agenda, we should now have been the economic bloc that is pushing ahead leaving the United States and China behind us, it didn't happen. Remember the Juncker plan, that pathetic attempt to convince Europeans that there is a plan for aggregate investment. It proved more of a water pistol than a big bazooka. The Green Deal, 1 trillion euros, what happened to it? The money simply was not there, and now it's unraveling. Now even Ursula von der Leyen has abandoned it for other projects. The recovery fund during the pandemic, macroeconomically insignificant and politically toxic, I would suggest. And I will explain why I'm saying that. Now, I'm saying all this as a committed Europeanist who wants to make this project called the European Union work. But we must face reality. And we must face the fact that Europe has failed spectacularly to collaborate in one important realm: investment. Do you realize that since the 1950s, we, the European Union, today's European Union, have invested a smaller percentage of our savings compared to the United States, compared to China, indeed compared to India and other parts of the world. Never before has an economic bloc invested such a small percentage of its wealth in its collective future. Now, is there any wonder that if you go out there, especially here in Germany these days, and I'm sure people from industry silently or vocally will concur with what I'm saying. Is it any wonder that the number one question that exercises most Europeans, and particularly most Germans today, is why is it that we are failing to put together all the advantages that we have? We have a wonderful tradition, history, immense innovative talents in this continent, on this continent. We have wealth, riches, we have universities, we have knowledge, and yet we are failing to stop the decline of our continent. Today, as we speak, we have managed to fall behind the United States by one technological revolution, and maybe we have fallen behind 2 technological revolutions behind China when it comes to the 2 important realms for the future: green energy and what I call cloud capital, digital capital. But why is this? Why has this happened? Well, allow me, since this is a more informal setting than the one I'm used to, and I really appreciate this opportunity, just think back to what happened once Wall Street collapsed in 2008. In Washington, there was a meeting immediately after Lehman Brothers collapsed. Big table, Ben Bernanke representing the Fed, Hank Paulson representing the US Treasury, the president, the leaders of JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all these powerful financiers, they sat around the table and put one question to themselves: what must we do to save ourselves from collapsing along with Lehman Brothers and Wall Street? That was the pertinent question to ask. At the very same time, in Brussels, there was another much larger table because we are, a populous political cabal, right? But the question was not the same. The question was, allow me to say, because I happen to know, the question was, what can we do to pretend that we are sticking by our rules when we know that our rules cannot be anything but violated while saving us? Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to say that the question that the American posed is not the same as the question we posed. And answering the second question is very different to answering the first question. Let me take you back to another crisis during the pandemic. The bottom fell out of all markets because of the lockdown. Companies were shut down, we were all locked in. You don't even need me to remind you of the horrors of that period. What happened was, essentially, that aggregate demand collapsed because of the lockdown in the United States under even Donald Trump. They just reacted very quickly. The Fed printed around $500 billion overnight. Checks arrived in people's homes, signed by the chairman of the Federal Reserve, in no time, essentially bolstering aggregate demand immediately. That didn't even count as part of the US public debt. That's a bigger decision, bigger discussion, I should say. Okay? Here, what did we do? We decided we needed to do something similar. We did something far more macroeconomically insignificant, and we issued common debt. But we don't have a treasury to do it. And we don't have a federal bank, central bank, that has in its charter the right to do that which the Federal Reserve did. So what we did is we allowed or instructed the Commission to issue bonds that are the equivalent of the subprime bonds of the United States real estate market, because the EC Commission bonds are sub-sovereign. They are not trusted by investors the way bonds are, the way even French bonds or even Greek bonds are, because there's no state behind them. So there's an architectural problem in Europe, which, of course, it's natural because we are a very diverse continent. We have many different languages, many different ethnicities. We're trying to come together since the late 1940s, early 1950s. But I don't know about you, especially the older ones amongst you, but in the 1970s and 80s, I was hoping that, I believed that Europe moves from crisis to crisis. And with every crisis, we manage to collaborate to do that which is right. And our great opportunity was the Euro crisis immediately after the collapse of the banks in the United States, the banks in Frankfurt, the banks in the city of London, the banks in Paris, and so on. And we didn't do it. Instead, we extended and pretended unpayable loans through bailouts. My country is a good example, but also all other countries. And we did not consolidate, we did not create that Hamiltonian moment. Then we had the opportunity to do it with the pandemic and the recovery fund. And indeed, the recovery fund was celebrated as a Hamiltonian moment. It wasn't, it was exactly the opposite. Because by creating for the first time a public debt in a manner which essentially put the burden of a common fund on the working class of Germany, of Holland, of the surplus countries, and what it did was, in a cynical manner, it transferred money to the oligarchs of my country, of Italy, of the deficit countries. That is what you do when you want to ensure that the majority of the Germans and the majority of the Dutch will never touch a federal treasury with a barge pole. That sounds pretty bleak. Allow me to say that we need to face up to the bleakness of our failures at collaborating at a pan-European level in order to, at this late stage, ensure that we have not missed the boat. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to collaborate and make the European Union work, I submit to you that we have to face up to the fact that we've run out of time. So far, I mentioned the Lisbon agenda, I mentioned the Juncker plan, I mentioned the Green Deal that was not green and wasn't a deal really. I mentioned the recovery fund, which has already, did you read the report of the auditors, the Auditor General of the European Commission? It's so damning. We cannot afford these third-best solutions, which are a smoke screen, just smoke and mirrors to cover up for the fact that we are not looking at each other in all honesty and saying to ourselves, as Europeans, whether we're Germans, Greeks, French, Dutch, Portuguese, Irish, and so on, it is time to collaborate. And what does this mean now for this continent of ours? Falling behind one or two technological revolutions behind, with the German industrial model becoming unsustainable, already having become unsustainable when investment is so low at the pan-European level. What we need to tell each other, in all honesty, in order to energize ourselves, is we have a simple choice. Federate immediately, within months start the process of federating, or accept that this Europe, the way we are fragmenting and going against the narrative of cohesion, of integration, essentially moving towards fragmentation and disintegration while we are celebrating the big words about cohesion and integration, we must accept that if we don't federate, this continent is doomed, as a result of a failure to collaborate, to stagnate for a century. This is our legacy, unfortunately, my generation's, my failed generation's legacy to those young people. Let us make this choice. I vote for federating. What do you vote for? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yanis Varoufakis. I actually wanted to ask you a few more questions on stage, Yanis, but we're running out of time, so I will later ask you whether Germany needs a troika, like Greece needed it a couple of years ago. We're going to focus on that during dinner. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to introduce a true expert in international cooperation. Mrs. Helle Thorning-Schmidt served as Prime Minister of Denmark from 2011 to 2015, making history as the first woman to hold this position. During her tenure, she was a very strong advocate for enhanced European integration and collaboration. One of the strongest advocates, actually. Following her political career, she took on significant roles in various international organizations. Notably, she served as the CEO of Save the Children International and is still co-chair of Facebook's, or as it's now called, Meta's Oversight Board. With her diverse experience in politics, in business and, as I said, in civil society, Mrs. Thorning-Schmidt offers a very unique perspective on the challenges and on the opportunities of international collaboration. Therefore, we are very delighted to have you with us today here to share your insights on this topic. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Helle Thorning-Schmidt.
It's delightful to be here. What an event, amazing venue and amazing program you have here. I've already, I saw when the children were up here, I had goosebumps, I almost teared up, because how lovely it is that you decided to invite the next generation to start us off to talk about collaboration. So thank you to the kids if they're still here. It was lovely to see you speaking and talking about children's rights, which is so important. I'm going to take you through a whirlwind of all the problems we have, but I'm also going to try to finish my 15 minutes being a little bit hopeful of the collaboration that we can create as leaders, if we are politicians, but also as people wherever we are in the ecosystem of trying to take decisions for our society, because I think we all have a role in trying to recreate collaboration. And of course, there's not only one solution, there is many, many solutions to try to solve the problems. But let's dive into the problems first. When I was in Davos this year, the World Economic Forum, there was one of my friends who looked at this year, 2024, that we had in front of us, and basically concluded that this year is the year of Voldemort. It's the year where we have elections, more elections than we had for decades in the world. We are actually well through many of these elections, but people were seriously worried that with elections these days come also debate about democracy. There could be coups coming. I know we have very, very serious elections in front of us still this year, but this was a year where we had an unprecedented number of people going to the polls and giving their vote. So a very special year. At the same time, everyone knows we are in the middle of deep geopolitical crisis. We had the all-out invasion of Ukraine. We now have a war in the Middle East where Israel is fighting a war on 4 fronts. Right now, and no one is actually seeing a solution or just the slightest ceasefire in that region, which is devastating for everyone involved. On top of that, we have geopolitical tension, which is hard to find out where is it going. I was in the States a couple of weeks ago, and everyone there who are in positions of power are talking about that they are fearing and actually almost predicting an all-out invasion of Taiwan from China's side. And there's no doubt that there is a economic tension between the US and China. It can result in a war on economic, but it could also result in even more serious issues. In that mix, let us throw Europe. We are in the middle of Europe right now. Today, we just had new numbers coming out from the German government saying that we have a sluggish economy in this country. And of course, me being a European, have been in European politics for more than 3 decades. What we all know that if we don't have the locomotive or the front runner of Germany driving the economy, it is a little bit depressing to look into the coming years. So there is enough of crisis to deal with. At the same time, we had the Draghi report coming out in September saying that Europe has basically lost our competitive edge. We're lacking a financial market. We're lacking a finalization of the single market. We are not playing a role in the digital economy, and it goes on and on. So it is actually hard these days to find really great lights in the dark. On top of that, we have an unprecedented situation where we have a lack of trust in everything. I sit on the board of a company called Edelman. Every year, and we have done for the last 2 decades, we've done a trust barometer. And what we measure in 24 is basically a new low level of trust in everything. No one trusts anything. People don't trust their leaders in politics. They don't trust journalists. They don't trust anything. They don't trust democracy. They don't trust tech, of course. Everyone knows that. So the low levels of trust is impacting how we can find solutions to some of all these problems that I'm talking about. And then, of course, we have a special, I wouldn't even call it a European problem, but also a Western problem, is that immigration has become an enormous topic in almost all European countries. There is no European country, as far as I can see, where immigration is not playing a huge role, and also in terms of how people vote. So people are worried about a whole array of things, from the economy, from trust in the institutions that they thought they believed in, from journalists to political leaders, to capitalism, to democracy. And on top of that, we have all these dividing issues that are also pulling us apart. What do I mean by dividing issues? I'm talking about immigration, of course, which we know is a dividing issue. I'm talking about security. The war in Ukraine is a dividing issue. Climate change is a massive dividing issue. And let me just sprinkle on top of that all the other things that we are discussing. We have our neighboring country here where they're still discussing pro and against abortion, which is happening in many other countries as well. We have countries where we still have a debate between what I would call conservative Christian values up against more woke modern values. And all of these, the real geopolitical problems, the lack of trust, all the issues that we are discussing just move us further and further apart. So the big question for all of us in this modern time, and I really think that the children set the tone, is to how do we try to build bridges? I'm of a generation where I feel it's my generation as a former political leader to try to be part of building bridges. And the best thing we can do when we build bridges is a couple of things. First of all, we have to keep asking of our political leaders that they find solutions to the big issues. The Middle East crisis is so divisive, not only in the Middle East, but also in our streets in Berlin, Copenhagen, London. Wherever we go, it's extremely divisive. We must ask of our political leaders that they don't exacerbate those divisions. We must ask that they speak up against anti-Semitism. We must ask that they speak up against people who are against the Muslim population. We must ask that they build bridges. And sometimes I get worried when I see politicians doing the opposite, using othering, using division to benefit their own political cause rather than building bridges. That was the first thing. We must start building bridges about these very difficult decisions, political choices. We must also try to find solutions. When I was Prime Minister, I dealt with everything. We were in the middle of an economic crisis. We had to deal with everything. But one thing we knew was that some of the issues that people really felt was an issue, we had to find solutions. That meant talking right there about immigration. If people are worried about immigration, I suggest we don't call people racist. Some people are racist, some people are not, but they can still be worried about immigration. We need to talk about it, and we need also in that space to build bridges. If people are worried about the economy in Europe, we need to find solutions here and now. I don't think we can say we just need a federation, because it's not going to happen. So we need to work with what we got, which is trying to find solutions all the time, which is also what we have shown in the European Union. I worked in the European Union for many, many years. And the good and amazing thing about the European Union is that every time we have a challenge, it might be an economic crisis, it might be the pandemic, it might be what we have now, where we have economic obstacles, I am convinced that we will find solutions, because we always do. I don't think we have failed in trying to find solutions. I think we're always slow, it doesn't look pretty, but we manage to find solutions. And the only hope we have is now we have a new commission, we have new leaders coming up all the time. Let's ask them to find solutions. So this is what the politicians have to do. But then there are the rest of us. Obviously, I was a politician, so I'm no longer a politician. I work in very many different spaces. But we all have to, as a matter of how we live our life, as a matter of which values we use every day, we need to start to listen more than we talk. We need to start to listen to the younger generation, find out what their worries are, and try to find solutions. If there's something we don't understand with people who have different values from us, we need to start listening. And we can all do that in our everyday life. There's so much of people saying, let's not listen to that group. They're just awful. We can't listen to them. But if you are a mature participant in this world, in Europe, in your state, in wherever you are, in your company, it is now that we say that collaboration will always win. And that means that we should not push, we should not support the extremes. It is always the 80% in the middle that will try to find solutions with each other. So my optimistic offer to you today is, yes, we're in the middle of an unprecedented geopolitical crisis. Top that with lack of trust. Top that with lack of trust also in the digital changes and AI. But there is a way, and we need to look at what has come before us, particularly in Europe. We are a continent that finds solutions to things, and I am convinced that even though it looks very bleak now, we are in a position to find solutions if we have that headline that is, let's build bridges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Helle Thorning-Schmidt. I'm really curious what's the solution between this dilemma of you two will be of federation's not going to happen and federation is the solution to every problem. We're going to figure that out, I hope. Now to our second guest on the panel, and Yannis, you will join right afterwards, right? Or you already can join. Cornelia Woll is a distinguished political scientist and professor of international political economy and the president of the Hertie School of Governance here in Berlin. With a focus on the interplay between politics on the one hand and economics on the other hand, she offers very, very valuable insights into societal transformation and collaboration. Cornelia has held significant, very significant research positions, including especially the Sciences Po in Paris for many, many years. I guess you will all agree that her expertise makes an ideal participant for exploring the dynamics of collaborations. May I ask you for a big hand for Cornelia Woll. Welcome on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, now maybe you check your iPhones, you check the app. If you haven't, I want to see a little bit more dynamics, like, damn, where's my iPhone? I haven't downloaded the app yet. Do this now. This is important because I'm going to ask you a question. This invitation, the invitation to this innovation forum stated that the year 2024 is a sort of make or break year to address issues like public polarization and the rise of anti-establishment movement. We've heard that before. In order to strengthen both economic and democratic resilience, we obviously need a more intensified form of cooperation and collaboration. Before we start with our fireside chat, we would like to know who you currently trust the most, because there was a lot of talk about trust and about the recent Edelman report that showed that in a very shocking manner, actually. And we also want to know in which areas of society trust is therefore the lowest. So we ask you this question now. We don't ask it at the end again because we're running out of time. But who do you trust the most today to ensure the success of the agenda reform needed to make our societies more resilient, more climate change proof, and prosperous? So is it the media? Is it political parties? Artists, entrepreneurs, tech moguls? I mean, I don't want to manipulate you with my face expression, but I don't think you're in favor of the tech moguls. No. Trade unions, scientists, innovators, young people. Who do you trust most? So, scientists and innovators. I think it's coming down to 92%. A question for all panelists. Helen, maybe you want to start. Given this auditorium is probably not necessarily a reflection of the whole society, are you surprised by the result?
No, I'm not at all, actually. I think this is a reply that most people would give these days, because I say the levels of trust are so low for politicians, for media. No one trusts anything, but we do trust innovators and scientists. My worry about that, and I didn't have time to talk about that, is that even trust in new innovations, the digital area, AI, for example, that has also become divided. We thought, like, can we not find one area where we're not so divided? But even that area is divided. And if you look at the States, for example, I think it's more in the US, this is something where the right wing is extremely skeptical towards innovation and everything new that happens in the digital space, where that has a clear tendency for the right wing to be more skeptical. So I don't know where this audience comes from. Maybe it's European, but if we had done the same question in the States, I think we would have gotten a political divide even on that issue.
Thank you. Cornelia, do you agree, or you want to?
Yes, I think the most worrying phenomenon is the erosion of trust in all of these categories. But let me bring a little bit of optimism and break it down. What we know about the trust in scientists is that it is strongest, and that is a slim line of hope for me, because it means we can still anchor our discussions in at least something, and I'll talk about why we should be worried, but that is a good sign. It's competing with people who are like me. People trust most scientists and people who are like me. My worry is that people who are like me, especially with social media, might one day become stronger than scientists or innovators who produce new things. But let me also say something about politicians. So in general, people do not trust politicians, but you can break it down into different political offices. And what we find is that people do trust politicians at the local level. Mayors are the most trusted political office holders. National politicians are distrusted. So what we see is you can overcome this reserve or this distrust in politics if you come closer to where people work, where they have interactions. And the same goes for political parties. Generally, people do not trust political parties as an institution, but political parties are the glue that connects the national to the local if they have a structure that allows to do so. People do like drinking beers within parties that they know at the local level. They do not like the national governments. And I say this because some countries have started to break the party system, I'm thinking here of France, to a point where there is no local representation as it has been for parties. Or think of Eastern Germany. Eastern Germany is not acquainted in a long tradition with political parties because back in the day they only had one party, and then the parties came in were the Western parties that they were not as familiar with. And that does something to a society. So I think it is very important when we think about the institutions we build to think about how to build them in a way that trust will become bigger and greater, and we really nourish it, because trust is the glue that keeps society together and that enables collaboration, and I absolutely think that's what we have to work on.
One follow-up question, because Helle mentioned the recent Edelman Trust survey. It was titled Innovation in Peril, and it showed that also a lot of citizens actually believed in science to foster innovation and prosperity, yet they were also very concerned about the politicization of science in itself. Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I do think this is something, yeah, you're smiling, so obviously I touched a button.
I'm smiling because it gives us sleepless nights, and it certainly keeps me on my toes. Science, the production of knowledge is becoming increasingly politicized. We've seen this most around the discussion of climate change, where all of a sudden a discussion that scientifically was almost resolved, which never happens in science, became politically a yes, but debate. And that is dangerous. We saw it more than everything else in the pandemic, where all of a sudden scientific knowledge became up for debate, and I've seen something else on Google, and maybe there is a different truth out there. So this era of post-truth is really a recent phenomenon that is very worrisome, and that also, and that's why I have sleepless nights, directs itself against universities as a breeding ground for specific worldviews rather than scientific knowledge. And it is absolutely vital that we defend a space for universities as the production and transmission of knowledge, and not a political battleground or part of a cultural war. And I would say the same thing goes for media, because media also produces knowledge, and we see that media is not trusted, but that is because there is a spectrum of media where media is just people throwing all sorts of news, including fake news, at readers who do not know what to do with it anymore, and what we call quality media, which we really have to fight over.
You know what's kind of funny? While you spoke, trade unions really gained some strength. Yanis, we're also experiencing, not just when we have this abstract term of science, but we're also experiencing a growing skepticism in society towards technologies in general. I mean, at least in Germany, that's the case. When you think about, or when you have public discussions about genetics, robotics, AI, there's a lot of skepticism. And my feeling is that this skepticism is growing as well. Do you share that opinion, and what kind of impact does it have?
Along the same lines as Cornelia, look, people trust science. They do not trust commodified science. It's not politicized, it's commodified science. It depends on who pays your bills as a scientist. Mm. If your salary is being paid by an established, appreciated, trusted public university here in Berlin or in Munich or in London or wherever, the chances are that your research output is going to be appreciated. But if you're being, let's say, embedded in OpenAI, working for Mr. Altman today, watching the shenanigans that are going on in that corporation to turn it from a not-for-profit into a for-profit AI generator, then suddenly you worry, and I worry too.
Yeah, that was kind of the breaking point.
These fantastic algorithms, which have a superb power to improve our lives, can be weaponized in order to extract rents from us, from companies, from our societies. So it is the commodification of science, is who owns the power to force science to do things for them that gives them enhanced extractive power over the rest of society.
That's an interesting point to make that differentiation. A question to you, Helle, as the former politician on this panel. During your time in politics, how did you experience the public mistrust when it came to the regulation of new technologies?
Well,
is it the same in Denmark as it is here in Germany?
I mean, I followed this discussion for a very long time, and now I do Meta's oversight board, which is basically I'm Meta's watchdog in terms of their content on their 3 platform Threads, Facebook and Instagram, which is very, very exciting because every day we take decisions about what is the cross point between free speech, which is a human right, and other human rights, like safety or that I should live without harm to myself and other human rights. So that is what, and it's very difficult to do content moderation, so that's what we do every day. And of course, we experience, I mean, the tech moguls, which is like also a brutal name, tech moguls doesn't even come up there. And I think it is interesting. I mean, I'm not so scared about tech, and I love AI, and I think there's many opportunities in AI. I can also see the negative sides, but I think the opportunities in AI are just amazing in terms of health, and us generally gathering information about a lot of different things. But let's leave that be. But I think the interesting thing is that all of us in this room, or most of us in this room, will today have used tech for something. We would have been on LinkedIn, we would have been on Instagram, we would have been on Facebook, something, we will have used something. So the interesting thing is, and I think that goes to a little bit of what you were saying, that if I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I actually trust what I'm seeing there. I trust what I'm doing myself, my own post. I trust the people I follow. I have a circle of trust in that space. And I think that underlines that trust has, in all aspects, gone local. We trust people that tell us something. If you tell me that there has actually been a man on the moon, I trust it. But if someone out there tells me, I might think it's a conspiracy theory, this is actually something that happens. So trust has gone very local. And what I think we have to do with tech is regulate tech. Of course, we have to regulate tech. But we also have to find a balance. So we also, in Europe, because we're not very good at it, try to use the market mechanisms to get the most out of all the new tech innovations that we're seeing. And politicians, again, I think politicians in Europe has been very quick to talk very negatively about tech moguls. I mean, I do think we have to be careful, because if we are using this language about tech, and again othering tech, we will not be able to regulate in a positive way, and we will not be able to also be part of an innovative platform in Europe.
Thank you. Let's get back to a point Cornelia has raised, and that is what I think is particularly interesting, and that is kind of the huge gap between local politicians, whom we trust, and let's remind ourselves, trust as a prerequisite for collaboration, or the ability to cooperate better, in a better manner. And on the other hand, politicians on a national level, where there is, I wouldn't say necessarily distrust, but more distrust than on the local level. And in that respect, let's talk a little bit about the role of the media, because now we have the media here by 10%, so obviously nobody trusts the media, or 90% don't trust the media as much as scientists and innovators. I would normally say that the role of media is kind of they forge a relation between the people I don't know, politicians on the national level, and I get to know them better through media. What could be the role of the media in the future for a constructive togetherness? Because you mentioned, sorry to add something, you mentioned the beer aspect. Of course, I cannot go for a beer with Yanis Varoufakis while he was finance minister of Greece. However, media create a relation, create a picture of somebody that I might trust more.
So let me maybe start with saying that media is, of course, essential because it allows to circulate information and transmit knowledge. But the problem is that media as a category is a lot of different things. And we live in an age where it's not the lack of information that makes us suffer, it is the oversupply of information.
The overload.
So as a society, what we have to learn now is not to trust the media, it is how to consume the media and to divide into what we don't want to consume and what is actually worthwhile knowing. And that is a little bit like the way we have to deal with food. We always think, you just eat well and then things will be fine. And there's such an overproduction of unhealthy food that we know now we have to teach our children how to eat well, what not to eat, how to navigate in this space where there is an overprovision. It's the same with information, and it's the same with media. We have to already teach our children at a very young age, and I think this is school and even preschool material, where do you take your information from? What type of information is good? What is bad? What is just there to amuse you? We know that we have today mechanisms that are regulated by an economy of attention that just respond to what makes us feel good and click more. And if we click more, we don't get better information. In fact, we get a lot of junk. And the terrible news that we have in this moment of crisis, you mentioned the wars that are currently really shaking our societies and dividing us. Wars are a terrible time for the provision of media because it is very hard to get good information about a war zone. But there is a really big need to be updated. And so you get an oversupply of companies who make money out of clicks by just giving all sorts of video game material and saying these are pictures from Ukraine or from the Palestinian territories, and we click and click and click, and it creates junk. And so in times of crisis and times where you need most information, you get the least amount of good quality media. So what we actually consume, I think, is the challenge of our times, and to allow people to navigate in an oversupply of information is the challenge.
May I ask you a personal question, all of you? What's your primary source of media? What do you read every day? What's your primary source media you trust? Tell me the brand.
So, I still trust the traditional newspapers, and actually the interesting thing is if you go to, for example, Wikipedia, which is where most people now look something up, the only sources that anchor whether something can be there still is the New York Times, our national newspapers that we know are.
So what's your favorite brand?
My favorite newspaper, I'll say, is the FAZ, but that's the first one.
Yanis?
Well, I have 6 or 7 subscriptions to newspapers.
Are you a news junkie?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Obviously.
First thing I do in the morning. So I'll tell you which ones they are. I don't mind hiding it. I like reading opinions that I disagree with, otherwise I get bored. So it's Wall Street Journal, it's Financial Times, it's New York Times, The Guardian.
And all of those you don't agree
Le Monde.
with? Those are all news brands you don't agree with?
Yeah. I just follow them, of course. Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on the journalist, right? But I have a vast capacity to disagree, even with myself. If you don't, then you're not thinking. But allow me to say that having been a news junkie all my life, and I think this is a common observation, the quality of the legacy media is declining fast. You can see that from their revenues. Their capacity to reproduce themselves and their business models is being destroyed. Now, Halle, don't get me wrong, I am also an algo junkie. I love my phone. If you deprive me of access to TikTok, Instagram, and so on, I'll get very cross. I was in China the other day, and I had to insist on my host to give me a VPN because I lost contacts with all this what I call cloud capital, which I write against. But like everything else, if you read Hesiod, the ancient Greek poet, you'll find laments about the age of iron, how the discovery of iron technologies going from bronze to iron was such a catastrophe for humanity. It was both. It was a blessing and it was a curse, like, this.
Like this.
But when it comes to the media, it's important to look at the interaction, the dynamic between the legacy media and the algos. Because what the algos did, take Meta, take Facebook, for instance, but not just Facebook, TikTok now, they gave publishers, newspaper owners, an amazing capacity to make money out of chopping bits and pieces of their news and feeding it through Facebook, through Google, and so on. And then once they grabbed them and the business model shifted from selling papers at the newsstands to making money on Google and Meta, then they had them. And then they downgraded them. And then they extracted rents from the New York Times, from the Financial Times, and so on. And therefore, it depleted the legacy media. And now you have a situation where the vast majority of people under 30 are not like us. They don't read the legacy media. And what worries me is this. It's not so much the good people who I'm sure are trying to do their best to moderate what's on social media. My problem is that these companies, the business model is based on keeping us angry. Because the only way of ensuring that we spend the maximum amount of time on, let's say, Twitter, X,
is anger.
Is for us to be angry at the people that we are responding, or wanting to elicit anger in response to our anger. So it's not so much, I don't care whether Elon Musk owns it or not, even though I'm not very enamored of him. What I mind is a business model where the coders, the scientists, who are very smart people, instead of coding to optimize the social benefits from these amazing technologies, they code in order to prime the algorithm to keep us angry and therefore to poison our democracies and our conversations. And that is the great issue about not AI, but these algos. And the question then is, how do you regulate that? And I don't think you can. Because I don't think you can regulate it. Regulation can help. So, for instance, imposing interoperability on X and on Meta, that is allowing you to take your followers, your data, your pictures, your videos, and go to another platform. That would be a very important regulation, but it's not enough, because we need to have ways of knowing how they are being coded.
One result of that...
Can I just
sorry, yes?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I think it's important because there is a big difference between making us angry and keeping us engaged. Everyone wants to have their clients, their customers engaged. That goes for newspapers, that goes for TV stations, that goes for Netflix. Everyone wants us engaged. When you put on something in Netflix, once you finish the series, they'll say, this is the recommendations we have for you to watch next, because they want us engaged. This is what we call the capitalist market. That's how it works. People want us to buy more. We all have to try to regulate how much we buy, what we buy, and have some self-regulation. So the social media, and allow me to disagree, they don't benefit from us being angry. They benefit from us being engaged, because what they sell is advertising. And they actually don't want us constantly in a stress of anger. They want us just engaged. And if you just look at your own behavior on social media, it will be the same for most people, that we think we get happy when we're on social media. They feed us things that we like to see. We see advertising that we're quite interested in. Sometimes you can be quite surprised that they think you're interested in that. But they feed us things that they think we want to see. So they don't feed on anger, they feed on engagement. And it's true, they are very, very good at keeping us engaged. And we as people have to take responsibility for how long we're there. But I actually don't agree that they feed of us being angry, because there's no money in anger, there's money in engagement.
Heather, with all due respect, Netflix is not a good example, because I'm talking about the part of the algorithm which replaces media, news, not entertainment.
I know.
When it comes to engaging us, when it comes to the war in the Middle East, the anger is their number one emotion that makes the adrenaline flow and maximizes their advertising revenue.
But Yanis, you're saying that TikTok is your favorite medium, or it could be WhatsApp, could be anything. It is not anger that drives you on TikTok. It is fun. It is that you have a little smile. There is a reason why we get all these cat photos and dog photos in our feed. It's because social media platforms feed on our engagement.
Let's agree upon it's feeding the interests you are in depending on the filter bubble you're in.
Yeah. I would say it's engagement that's the result that one wants, but the engagement comes with emotion. The emotion can be very negative, very often it is, and it can be cats and kittens.
Yeah.
And then it's positive. But
ladies and gentlemen, let's not focus too much on kind of the true nature of social media. I used to be a journalist for many years, and there's one truth in journalism that always said, nobody's reporting about happy landings. People are interested in the bad news, are interested in anger, whatever, how you call it. However, this kind of engagement, be it anger or be it fascination for cats and dogs, throughout had an impact this summer. I mean, when you look at the elections that happened in Europe over the course of the last month, many voters resorted to populist and to very anti-establishment parties. out of disenchantment with traditional parties. So many voters obviously trusted radical parties. They trusted them more than the traditional parties. What is the consequence of that? Will the traditional parties possibly have to kind of reinvent themselves as movements? What is the way out of that status quo? Maybe Helle, Yannis, Cornelia.
Well, I want to say something that might be controversial, but I
Yes,
think,
please. We love controversial.
But I was Prime Minister in Denmark, and before that I was 10 years leader of my party. And we could see all that time that, for example, immigration and the so-called cultural meeting wasn't always a beautiful story. And one of the things that we did right, and one of the reasons why the Social Democratic Party still is a very big party in Denmark, for example, is because we actually acknowledged that people could be worried about immigration without being racist. And I do think there has been a tendency in some European countries to not recognize that people are worried about their work, they're worried about all the new technology, they're worried about their place in society. In this country, we've had big divisions in history. So people can be worried, and I do think it is up to mainstream parties not to cater to that, not to agree with all that othering and the hatred, but to have a little ear listening to what's going on and try to find political solutions. That's what I meant when I say we have a huge responsibility to sometimes listen and to try to find political solutions. And that's what I did in government.
Okay. Since you said it might be controversial, I immediately would like to ask
go to Yannis
to fire up that controversy, and then Cornelia, you can kind of do the Solomonic part. Yannis, go ahead.
Well, since Helle went back to her own past, allow me to go back to my own past.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I was a totally obscure academic writing mathematical models for 10 people who were interested in them. The reason why I got engaged in political commentating and macroeconomics was because at around 2003, 2004, I began losing sleep over what was coming. I could see the debt overhang in the United States. I could see the exorbitant money printing of the Wall Street bankers, how that was infecting the banks in Frankfurt, the banks in Paris, the banks in... And I could see a new 1929 coming. And I started writing about that in 2006. And then our generation's 1929 hit. And that was in the year 2008. Again from Wall Street, again Europe was felled by this tsunami that came from the Atlantic. And again, our politics, the center didn't hold. We failed to rise up to the massive lack of investment which I was talking about in my almost, in my keynote.
That was close.
Okay, and what happened after 1929? The center didn't hold. Our governments failed, both the social democratic governments and what was equivalent back then, in the Weimar Republic, the center-right governments. And who were the only ones that managed to harvest the discontent from that crisis? The xenophobes, the racists, the fascists. And I could see this coming. And I remember in my first meeting, since I'm in Berlin, and I might as well mention that, in my first meeting with Wolfgang Schäuble, I said to him, look, I know you don't like me because I'm a left-winger, but at least we are Democrats and we're pro-European. If you crush us, what will happen is the fascists are going to rise. Not only in my country, but in your country as well.
What did he say?
Because something about East Germany, but that's not. But I take a more political economic view, because this is my background. I genuinely believe that 2008 was, to our generations, what 1929 was then. And it is, of course, history never repeats itself, but it rhymes. And now we see exactly that. We see stagnation. We don't have the very severe crisis, economic crisis that we had in the 1931, 1932 in Germany under the Weimar Republic. Why? Because the central bank printed 11 trillion euros, and like cortisone, it made the patient feel better, but not cured the cancer under the skin. And this is why I made the statement. Helle, I also used to believe, and I still believe, that 10 years ago there were solutions without federation. Today, we've missed that boat, at least in the Eurozone.
But can you agree on the main point, what Helle said, and that is, in my view, that within this editorial society we're living in, where everybody is not just a receiver of messages, but also a sender of messages, that listening is a very integral part of politics, and it's not listened enough out there. Can you agree with that?
Of course. But listening is one thing. Simply reflecting as a mirror the prejudices of your voters is another thing. And I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, that we Europeans are culpable. For 1,000 years, we've sent migrants to the rest of the world, some of them armed, to destroy other peoples, like the Incas and so on, and the Aborigines in Australia. We populated the world. Emigration was our God-given right for 1,000 years. Now all that has happened is we are getting older as a continent compared to Africa and Asia and so on. We are also responsible for wars that uproot people from there. We need people to come to Europe, but we are, instead of creating safe passages for them to come, for the people that we need to come here, due to our demographic problems, we are erecting borders and we are playing to the gallery of the racists and the xenophobes that are gathering strength after our generation's 1929 in 2008.
So Cornelia, you're in a very, in terms of a discussion and panel discussion, you're in a very privileged situation now. We have 50 seconds left and you have the last word. So please go ahead.
So in 50 seconds, I don't want to say something about how to fight populism because it would be too long, but I do very much agree it is to the political parties to build bridges and to have a language that is not the one proposed by the populists. And I'll also say that why are they able to harvest so much anger and discontent, I think is also in part due to the fact that there are huge problems we need to solve as societies. And we're today in a very connected world with very high speed circulation that creates a number of challenges that we have to tackle. Climate change is one, the pandemics, the wars are others. And in order to solve these humongous challenges, I think the key is the topic of this conference. We have to work together. It's not just the politicians that can deliver that. It's not just the private sector. It's not just the scientists, and it's not just civil society. But working together and collaborating needs trust. I invite you to work with somebody you don't trust. It's quite a ride. But in order to work well together, it's also respecting what everybody contributes. It's not for business it's not for politics to tell the business leaders how to run their business. It's not for the business leaders to tell the scientists what knowledge to produce. And it's certainly not for the scientists to tell the politicians how to make decisions about collective action problems. So if we build on all of our strengths and then we listen and work together, I think we can solve a lot of the important problems. And
yeah. Cornelia Woll, Helle Thorning-Schmidt, Yanis Varoufakis. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. You got to catch a flight, right? You're going to stay a little. You're going to stay a little bit, right? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the BMW Foundation has evolved to take on a new role. We heard that before, to bring the power of its global network to address concrete challenges in a collaborative process. I hope you agree that this very interesting and very lively discussion we have just witnessed serves as a sort of a proof point that this approach of BMW Foundation put them absolutely, in my opinion, on the right track. Thank you very much. And now on to the next topic, and my dear friend Katie, she will explain you why art and artistic intervention can be such a powerful tool of transformation, something that is, as we just heard, heavenly needed. Thank you very much. Katie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dominic. And we, of course, will include everything what we've heard about trust, also about tomorrow, because trust is really also fuel for transformation, for change, for working together.